Hey, this is Tom with BuncombeShinola. You know, when you think of the incendiary, core-shattering, transcendent music of the John Coltrane Quintet, which has been the operational barometer for precedent-shattering, avant-garde extremes in jazz and all of the music since it was created, probably not the first thing that jumps to mind is its connection to exploitation, even schlocky films over the decades. But surprisingly, there is a small group of cult cinema appearances by the members of Coltrane's band. And today we'll be exploring a quick recap of these performances in these movie oddities. First up, we have ERIC Dolphy in Rock All Night, 1957. Truly one of the closest confidants of the bebop movement's transition into free jazz. Dolphy, who died young, was such a pivotal contemporary to John Coltrane, Mingus, and more. But, you know, it's important to keep in mind, especially initially, that these were all still working musicians. And Dolphy had a gig with the Eddie Beale Sextet, who was backing up the vocal group The Platters for some sides. And the call came in that Roger Corman was looking to make another youth-oriented crime picture, which needed musical numbers. And suddenly, Dolphy found himself on the set of Rock All Night, right alongside the rockabilly of the blockbusters, and just a few scenes away from such Corman regulars as Dick Miller, Russell Johnson, Jonathan Hayes, Mel Vels, and one of my personal heroes, Bruno Vasoda. Eventually, Roger Corman built his fame on the success of this sort of drive-in fair monster movie, you know, stuff like Attack of the Crab Monsters, Night of the Blood Beast, The Beast with a Million Eyes, Not of This Earth. But it might surprise you to find out that initially he made as many westerns as he did juvenile delinquent movies, such as Hot Car Girl, Teenage Doll, Carnival Rock, and the aforementioned Rock All Night. Here you have ERIC Dolphy, of which there's precious little film of ERIC Dolphy. But here in this drive-in schlock teenage grinder, you have one of the foremost, most respected figures that the jazz scene has ever produced. Strikingly incongruous, but let me tell you, it ain't shit compared to our second example, which is Elvin Jones in ZACHARIAH from 1971. You know, in the post-Easy Rider landscape, all of the major studios were desperate to try to concoct their own counterculture motherloads. And so they were briefly willing to throw huge budgets at whatever hippie they thought could replicate the same sort of youth drug culture bonanza. In retrospect, this all seems kind of crazy. I mean, obviously, Easy Rider is a fluke, right? But all the way through the 70s, you have these... And I was just watching The Last Movie, which was Dennis Hopper's follow-up. You know, and it kept going for a few years. Another one I watched is Myra Breckinridge. I mean, these are just movies that are aggressively drug-drenched, nonsensical... And obviously, The Last Movie is much more serious than Myra Breckinridge, but they're both just the same sort of failed attempt to tap into this market that they did not understand, and this strange proclivity to throw mounds of money at it to make it happen. During the Easy Rider period, some of these same creators were already making inroads to the Western genre, bringing some new sensibilities and strangeness. But it was really after the landmark success of El Topo by Jodorowsky, which became one of the first cult head midnight movies, and which is, at its core, a very bizarre, dark Western, that you saw this overlap of genres, very strange LSD Western movies. And I guess at the face of it, you can sort of consider ZACHARIAH a hoped mishmash of El Topo and Easy Rider, except much nicer and less violent. And it is a mess. You know, all of these movies are a mess. And ZACHARIAH is certainly no different. I mean, you got the James Gang, you got Country Joe and the Fish, you have a young Don Johnson, you have like a set that's kind of like, you know, high school play in the middle of the desert, people dancing on it. You have it's supposed to be a Western, so you've got your Western movie set. And then in a scene which I cannot explain, but I'm so glad exists, Elvin Jones, the drummer for the John Coltrane Quintet, appears as the sheriff, has a gunfight with someone in the saloon as the James Gang is playing. And after he's done, he nudges over back behind the kit, kind of shooing away the dude from the James Gang, and then plays a drum solo. However crazy I'm making it sound, it's crazier than that. I mean, it's so many disparate elements coming together unpredictably. I'm sure there's people who the most fascinating aspect of this film will be to see a teenage Don Johnson well before Miami Vice. But, I haven't even mentioned the New York Rock Ensemble. I haven't even mentioned Doug Kershaw. It is just this insane kind of reward for seekers of jazz and cinema obscura. And this sort of lovingly outdated fanaticism figures into our next example, which is McCoy Tyner in 2008's Be Kind, Rewind. This film's plot involves a VHS rental store whose stock gets entirely erased, and the proprietors create do-it-yourself new versions of the films to continue their business. There is an extremely amusing scene of their production of the replacement versions, which is definitely the best scene in the film. But beyond that, for me, the film's centerpiece moment, and I must warn you that it doesn't appear as though this scene exists in every version you can see of this film. I've definitely seen the DVD version where this scene is in there, but I think the initial release was not included, so I don't want you to feel crazy if you go looking for this scene and don't find it, because it's definitely happened to me. But an unexpected plotline involves the early American jazz pianist Fats Waller. And at one point we were shown a room full of fans listening to some of his records. And amongst these appreciators is John Coltrane's pianist, McCoy Tyner, sitting alongside Jimmy Scott, another legendary jazz musician, an incredible vocalist. All definitely getting along in years by this point, that's for sure. They're sitting alongside some other notable musicians that I will not reveal quite yet, but I'll get back to it. It's just a beautiful, touching scene, certainly underappreciated for the fans that would enjoy it, if not completely unknown. But yeah, there you have it. Be Kind, Rewind, the film that brings together Tenacious D, Mos Def, and the John Coltrane Quintet. But what of John Coltrane himself? I guess he rather gives off the impression of someone that would be disinterested in the frivolity of appearing in some goofball film project. But certainly in the time since his passing, he's appeared in numerous soundtracks. In fact, I'd say he's sort of become a go-to for mainstream films, the kind of easy move to achieve soundtrack cred edginess. But that's not to say that his work does not appear in more interesting outre offerings, and there is overlap with another mainstream reluctant hero of mine, which brings us to our fourth example, John Coltrane and the films of Charles Bukowski. Blues for Ernie makes an appearance in the breakout Bukowski vehicle Barfly, amidst an impressive soundtrack of quality artists, which had kind of slipped my mind since there's a tendency to focus on the more or less de facto theme of Barfly, which is Hip Hugger by Booker T and the MGs, bringing us to an extremely satisfying factoid circle, because later in Be Kind, Rewind, some of the other musicians hanging out with McCoy Tyner listening to Fats Waller are Booker T and the MGs guitarist Steve Cropper, who you no doubt recognize from the Blues Brothers. But my research for this video brought me to a Coltrane-Bukowski overlap, which even as a fanatic of both, I was unaware of, which is a documentary called The Best Hotel on Skid Row from 1990. Bukowski narrates, again, I can't believe I did not know this, and it's easy to remember and so hard to forget by Coltrane figures amidst some other very cool music, including Tom Waits, and some heartfelt bashing from some of the down-and-out LA hotel's denizens. Even without the celebrity dressing, it would make for extremely compelling viewing, and I highly recommend it. It was really a joy to unearth something that was unfamiliar to me as well, as I'm sure several of these movies are unfamiliar to most of the people watching this. It's just the sort of reward that you hope comes along with intense exploration, be it with intense extremes of American music, or in the adventurousness of visual expression, or even in just the realm of passionate fandom. We find the common ground where looking furthest into unfamiliar territories becomes the richest reward unto itself. Hey, this is Tom with BuncombeShinola. Thanks for watching. I appreciate your interest in this admittedly kind of strange topic. It was fun to watch all these movies, and it was fun to make this video. We'll be coming up with more Ramones reviews soon, some more songs from my old record, more archived interviews with the late Tiger Lindell Tate about his career in rock photography, some more videos about strange pop culture topics such as this. If you'd like to help the channel, please like, please share, please feel free to subscribe in order to follow the content. It does not cost anything. You're just following us. And if you have subscribed, make sure you click a notification so that you don't miss anything coming up. A bunch of weird, cool stuff is coming. Anyway, thanks again for watching. Talk to you soon.